Greetings. Here with you is Sonia Falcon, a servant of the Lord who invites you to grow in faith, to give meaning and purpose to your life. To draw closer to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, let us go deeper into the great mystery of salvation by answering the following question. How does Jesus save us with his death on the cross? Let us discover this great truth of faith.
In The Rescue Project by Father John Riccardo, we discover very significant details about our salvation. First of all, to be able to value, be grateful for, and accept the redemption that God has granted us through the sacrifice of His Son, Jesus Christ, it is necessary to see how terrible our destiny would be without this reconciliation.
With the original sin of Adam and Eve, who fell into the deception of the serpent, Satan, the relationship between God and humanity was broken. Because of this, we lost sanctifying grace, and sin and death had total dominion over every human being.
Redemption was needed, a reparation for the sin committed at the origin of humanity, in order to reconcile us with the Father, receive the sanctifying grace lost through original sin, and thus be able to inherit heaven. But many ask, why did God want the death of His Son to save us? The Father's will, which Jesus fulfills perfectly, is to love us. During His terrible suffering on the cross, as Father John Riccardo tells us, Jesus was doing 3 great works. First, Jesus wants to show us the great love the Father has for us, as John tells us in chapter 3, verse 16.
For God so loved the world that He gave His only Son, so that everyone who believes in Him might not perish but might have eternal life.
Second, Jesus had to become sin, taking on all the sins of humanity in His body. As St. Paul tells us in his second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 5, verse 21,
For our sake He made Him to be sin who did not know sin, so that we might become the righteousness of God in Him.
Third, Jesus was fighting, like a great warrior, against the forces of death and sin, against Satan, to rescue us. Mark tells us in chapter 10, verse 45,
For the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give His life as a ransom for many.
Since Satan lacks the experience of love, it is inconceivable for him to think that God would become flesh and dwell among us. On the other hand, Satan is incapable of understanding that God, incarnate, would die for a sinful humanity. This is what St. Paul tells us in his letter to the Romans, chapter 5, verse 8.
But God proves His love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us.
Father Riccardo tells us that Jesus was most active in His work of redemption while on the cross. The most impressive thing is that while on the cross, although it seems that Jesus Christ is only suffering a terrible death, He is actually attracting His prey, the devil, so that when He is very close, He can destroy him. Satan, who cannot believe that Jesus is God, attacks Him with his deadly sting, but although Jesus' humanity does experience death, His divinity does not. God never dies. When God enters death, He conquers it from within, eliminates it, frees all the deceased from the clutches of the evil one, and wins us reconciliation with God and entry into heaven through salvation. Good has definitively triumphed, and we will see this in fullness at the end of time, at the second coming of Christ in all His glory. Through His obedience, God the Father resurrects the Son, returning Him to eternal glory. But through His humanity, salvation is granted to the rest of all human beings. As St. Augustine tells us,
God became man so that man might become God.
let us thank the Lord for His surrender to death, for you and me. Now, through the waters of baptism, we enter into God's family as His beloved sons and daughters. With the strength that God's grace gives us, let us live our path of holiness, so that one day we may be in God's presence for all eternity.
Remember to subscribe to my channel, like it, and leave a comment. If this video helped you grow in your faith, please share it with someone who could also benefit from this message.
May God bless you always.